Dr. Ginny here, coming in to talk about struggling with an addiction response to food and drink. I know this is an issue for a lot of people. It was an issue for me. I struggled for years with overindulging with food and drink, and it was really starting to affect my life, even though I really didn't want to admit it. I did not feel like I was an alcoholic. I did not ever consider myself a food addict, but I had to admit that food and drink had become like overly important and overly exciting and overly stressful for me. So drink was definitely wine, it was alcohol, but it was also Diet Coke. I also was quite addicted to coffee, which I still am. I didn't decide I had to get rid of that. But I had a lot of like big attachments, a lot of stressful relationships with food and drink. And it was starting to affect my life in the sense that I was gaining weight, especially after menopause. By the time I decided I have got to do something different about this, dieting isn't working, etc., I was 60 pounds overweight, and that's a lot. And I had developed prediabetes. I had pain and inflammation throughout my system that was making it hard to even go for a walk. I certainly couldn't hike in the mountains anymore. I pictured hiking in the mountains in my 80s, but here in my mid 50s, I wasn't able to do it anymore. And my relationship with food and drink seemed to get more and more difficult to manage. I didn't really want to admit it was a problem or how much it was affecting my life because I was kind of in love with my eating and drinking habits. They felt really important to me. It felt like the way that I eat and drink each night, all the time, is very special. Like, I've earned this, I deserve this. I like to have wine, I like to have desserts, I like to have special food and drink. I felt like it was my pleasure and joy. It was high class and sophisticated. There were just foods and drinks that called to me that I couldn't say no to, frankly, right? And so I would try to eat and drink these things in moderation. All right, I'm not going to do that tonight. I remember so many days. I'm just not going to do the wine and the cheese and all the stuff tonight. I'm going to eat something reasonable and go to bed. By the end of the day, almost every time I said that, yes, I am going to have the things, I want the things, right? So there's this, I can't resist, I can't stop myself kind of momentum to it. Do you guys ever experience that? Like, I was just going to have one and then I didn't stop. I just feel compelled. I can't make myself stop. I can't make myself say no. I'm trying to moderate because everyone says that's the thing to do, is just moderate. Just don't overdo it. That's what I've learned my whole life. But it didn't seem to be working. It was causing a lot of like battling with myself. And the struggle was kind of getting worse and worse and worse for me with time. So I want that. No, I don't want that. I'm not going to have that. Yes, I am going to have that. I want to stop. I don't want to stop. I just want to do better with it. It was like a lot of energy and stress going to trying to manage my food and drink, right? My relationships with certain foods and drinks. And like I say, the effect on my life was just getting worse. And so I knew I need to change this, but I was really scared to change it. It felt really important. Like, this is my identity. This is my joy in life. This is my pleasure. It's important, right? I was very devoted to it. I think there were at least 10 or 15 years that I was in a pretty heavy battle trying to change my relationship with food and drink, but trying to hold on to my relationship with food and drink, right? And it was getting worse and worse. So getting out of the struggle finally became possible when I defined the problem differently, when I quit trying to defend my current habits. And this is part of what I want to share with you today. So I would look up, am I an alcoholic? Well, no, I'm not an alcoholic, so I don't need to change my drinking. Well, but it's causing me a lot of stress. It's causing me health issues, right? I'm not a food addict. I never ever saw myself as an eating disordered or food addicted person, but the way I was eating and drinking was causing me problems with my health and with the stress level in my life. So I started defining the problem as whether I'm an addict or an alcoholic, I am having an addiction response. See if that could be helpful to you. Like, well, the way I'm responding to this food and drink is an excessive kind of reaction, excessively excited, excessively stressed, right? And I want to fight against having this addiction response to food and drink. I need to fight against addiction to win. I don't want addiction in my life. So that's what I started fighting against. I couldn't fight against those foods and drinks that I loved, at least not at first. Now I have a different feeling about them. But I did want to fight against having an addiction response driving my eating and drinking and really affecting my health and my future. So I'm going to fight addiction, and I had to get a bit of a warrior spirit about it. So let me tell you why that approach could be helpful to you. And maybe a lot of you, I know the group that I'm speaking in today, a lot of you maybe have gotten this warrior spirit and have already been fighting addiction, maybe winning over addiction to alcohol, and then struggling with, I'm having an addiction response to certain foods too. A lot of people say, now I'm really into sugar, right? I can't stop. I'm eating more and more sugar than ever. I'm having more and more cravings than ever. So I want to talk about the biology to be aware of. It's an important fact. There are things that are happening in our body when we're eating or drinking addictive things that it helps to be aware of. This isn't just something to battle with willpower because our biology is responding to what we're doing. So I started becoming really aware. All the foods and drinks that I struggle with trigger an extra big dopamine response. So I always talk about it had to be special, special, special. Well, what did that mean? It meant it had to give me kind of a fast, exciting response. It had to drive cravings. It had to drive a feeling of, wow, that was good, that was special. And the thing that means, this is special, what's happening in our brain is we get this big dopamine hit. Anything that hits our brain extra fast, sugars like that, alcohols like that, cocaine is like that, etc. Anything that gives us a big extra dopamine response and an extra fast response drives what's called a salience effect. So it drives us to perceive this as, oh, this is important. This is important. It drives learning. So the human brain has evolved over the millennia to experience a feeling of salience. This is important whenever we find something, for example, that's high calorie, or anytime we find something that is extra exciting. So our brain believes, oh, extra exciting means this is important for survival. Now, we're in a very dangerous environment these days because there's a whole lot of things that are bad for our health that are driving that kind of, ooh, this seems important response. It's in there to tell us, remember where you got that and get more, right? So there were certain times in human history where there was a lot of fruit available, and we would eat the fruit, we would get that taste of sweetness, and our brain would say, ooh, that was special, that was good, get more of that. Where are you going to get that tomorrow? And that's partly because those things were really good for us. Now, the things that give us that kind of, ooh, this was special, this was important response are the things that are detrimental to our health. So this is really troublesome for us. So we want to slow down and pay attention to anything that feels extra exciting, extra special, anything we have cravings for, because in these times, what's happening is our primitive brain is getting tricked into thinking this is important, this is extra highly valuable, I'm going to want to get more of this, and it's driving us to eat and drink a lot of stuff that isn't good for us. In fact, let me see if I have the statistics here. Researchers who look at how much of our food is highly processed, there's a lot of research showing highly processed stuff is bad for our body, gives us an extra hit of dopamine that makes us want more. It looks like now some researchers have said, I've seen over 60% very consistently. Some are finding 73% of the diet of what's available for food in the United States. 73% is ultra highly processed. So it's now most of our food supply. Now, if we agree that 60% of the food we're eating or more is highly processed, that the corollary is less than 40% of what we're eating is actually nutritious food. As I've studied all this, it looks like that's a big part of what's driving the obesity epidemic, the diabetes epidemic, the high blood pressure and heart disease epidemics in our society. These things are all going together. So we get really frustrated with ourselves. I don't know why I keep eating so much of this. There's a lot of biology happening. So we get this big hit of dopamine. Ooh, that was special. Ooh, that was important. I need to learn and remember where this was and get more tomorrow. So now our brain is primed to look for that. Where is that? Where is the extra high calorie, extra sweet stuff? Because my brain thinks it's important to survive. So that's part of the biology we're up against. We're not going to just fight this with willpower and intention, right? It's going to take some intention. It's not just going to be, I'll just say no whenever I can, right? We're not going to succeed very well. So let's get really aware there's a biology here where we're driven to get things for us that aren't good for us, believing, feeling, this is really important for me. I need to get as much of it every chance I can, right? So it's because the human brain evolved to seek out and take advantage of calories every chance we can. And sugar, salt, and fat particularly drive that feeling of, ooh, that seems important for survival. So now our food environment is full of highly processed foods that have added sugar, added salt, and added fat. It's extremely difficult for us to resist. So now what I find is getting really, really clear what is actually highly nutritious and what isn't, and having a clear demarcation and driving myself towards closer to 100% highly nutritious foods and little or no ultra-processed foods is extremely helpful. So let me see, I'll repeat that again at the end. So food is very much proven to cause a lot of addiction response. So is alcohol, right? Alcohol is sugar plus ethanol, and both of those drive this addiction response. So any drug that gives a fast, intoxicating effect, oh, that felt good. That's driving the salience effect. That seems important. Figure out where you're going to get more tomorrow. Now, there are some individual differences in the risk of getting addicted to these kinds of substances and these kinds of responses, but in general, the human brain is wired to respond this way. This is important. Get it every chance you can. So as I started realizing, if this is an addiction response, I know a bit about this as a psychologist. I know that some of what I learned about addictive things growing up, at least when it came to food and drink, as far as, well, moderate it. Just try not to overdo it. Actually, that's going to make me want more. That's just going to keep me in this more compulsive, stressful, how can I say no, but I feel a strong feeling that I want it, that I would say to myself, I deserve it, right? So I'm in a difficult spot. Now let me tell you, there's a counteracting response in our brain that makes it even more difficult. And that is that the next step in our biology, the human body says, well, we're getting excess dopamine. We keep having this wine, we keep having this chocolate, etc. We're having way too much dopamine. This is a problem, right? The body's always looking to maintain balance and homeostasis. So having anything that gives excess dopamine hits leads the body to down-regulate dopamine. So what that means is it starts thinning out the dopamine receptors. It gets harder for us to feel pleasure. It gets harder for us to feel motivated, to feel excited, right? And this is why people, when they're using drugs, and I see this happening for us with food and drink too, is we start to feel like we need it because nothing else gives us pleasure anymore. So this situation really sucks, right? It's a big driver of addiction. The brain is just not designed to cope with the amount of stimulation, the repeated flood of dopamine that our processed food environment is giving us. So to try to maintain homeostasis, it down-regulates dopamine. We don't want to have excess dopamine, and we don't want to have difficulty accessing dopamine. It's what gets us out of bed in the morning. It's what gets us to go do some exercise, to go prepare some food, right? These changes in the brain make us feel bummed out, like just kind of empty. I don't know. I just don't feel right. So whether it's heroin or cocaine or alcohol or sugar or chips, it feels like I need to get more of that stuff, right? So our general sense of joy and motivation for life diminishes when we have that in our lives, that dopamine downregulation. We seek out the drug or the drink or the extra exciting food to get some pleasure. And now the pleasure is less than it was because of dopamine downregulation. What that felt like for me was, I remember my food and drink is really, really special and exciting. I was going out to dinner many times a week. I was getting wine with every meal. And I just kept finding myself in this position of, oh, this isn't as special as I thought it was going to be. What would make this more special? And so I was sort of in this constantly seeking more pleasure, more excitement, more specialness kind of place. So now, even though I'm overeating and overdrinking a whole lot of stuff, I'm getting to what should be the end of a meal and feeling like I really didn't scratch the itch yet, right? That's an addiction response. That's how our brain is trying to fix the problem of excess dopamine and dopamine downregulation. So it just becomes more difficult to get the pleasure we used to get. What a lot of people find, the small joys in life don't even register anymore because of dopamine downregulation. So there's a biology here. This isn't about how good a person you are. This isn't about how moral a person you are. There's a lot of biology involved. I mentioned the biology part because solving this problem is going to be a matter of changing our biology. And we can do that with intention. We're not going to win this battle by ending up in a willpower situation over and over and over. So there's biology, and then there's a lot of psychological elements contributing to this struggle too, right? So the salience of effect of certain foods and drinks that give an extra dopamine hit, the salience effects communicates to our primitive brain that's important. Pay attention, notice it every time it's in your environment, look for it, right? So you're trying to say no to something and you're just feeling like you want it more and more. It's all you can see around you. Oh, I really was going to quit pastries, but why is every store I go by have donuts, right? Or I was going to quit alcohol, but why are everyone's drinking on TV, right? Or even in the books I was reading. So this feeling of salience, this feeling of importance, makes us feel resistant to giving those things up. And so we love the idea of, I'm just going to moderate these things. I'm not going to have too much. I'm just going to have a little. Now, the farther you go into this process, the harder that becomes, right? So it seemed like a great idea to moderate drinking in my 20s. And by my 50s, it was like, yeah, this is not working. I was never going to be someone who drank every night. Now I'm drinking every night. I was never going to drink more than 1 or 2 glasses a night, and then it was a bottle, and then it was, I really, really want something after that bottle, right? So I could observe over time, this just keeps going. This just keeps getting worse and worse. Same thing with certain foods and drinks, right? Tell me what foods and drinks make that happen for you. I have a huge list, to be honest. And it was embarrassing to me. I didn't want to look at it. But looking at it made it possible for me to go, yeah, I have an addiction reaction to that food, and I have an addiction reaction to that drink. I was super addicted to Diet Coke. I actually want to cry when I think about it because it was painful giving it up. Now that is something I will not go near with a 10-foot pole because I got really tired of how stressed I was about drinking this thing that was giving me a hit of pleasure for sure, but it was definitely, there's nothing good about that for my body. In fact, there's a lot of good evidence that it's bad for my body. So I won't go near it because I know one drink makes me want more of it. So there's a whole lot of foods and drinks for me. So yeah, let me know, you guys. Cheese, butter, crisps. Oh, good, I can see over here. Oh, yeah. So fat and processed. Cheese and butter are fat and crisps are processed foods. Yeah, totally. We're going to totally have a reaction to those things. Chocolate and ice cream. Yes. Sugar, anything with sugar. And the ridiculous thing is, and this makes me want to cry too, is how sugar is added to everything now and how much deception there is from the processed food industry about adding sugar. They realized we're saying, okay, yeah, I really like the things that have sugar, but I really got to cut back on my sugar, so I'm going to look at the labels. So one of the things that they have done to try to hide how much sugar they added, because the food industry, the processed food industry, has figured out how much sweetener do we have to add before people will keep buying our product. And it's a lot. So they know that we then look at the packaging and go, oh, I can't buy this, it's got too much sugar. And they say, okay, well, we're going to use 4 different kinds of sugar and spread it through the ingredients. And make some of them sound like they're not sugar, hopefully, and then it will taste like what you want and you'll feel good about it. So tremendous deception in the processed food marketing industry. Doritos, yes, wait, oh wow. Hey Dawn, glad you found me at the right time. Crackers, yeah. So the thing about crackers and biscuits and crisps is the food has been processed from a grain, usually, into a flour. And so it gets into our system and gives us a hit of dopamine, a much faster hit of dopamine, a lot like sugar does. So it may not taste sweet, but it's concentrating the sugars in the food, the starches in the food. And that's part of why that gives us a big enough dopamine hit that we want more and more and more. And wine, yes. Yeah, I'm so glad I finally realized how to break up with those things because they were ruining my life, right? So I'm turning 65 in a couple of weeks. 10 years ago, when I finally started saying, I've got to change this, 60 pounds overweight, I couldn't sleep well, I couldn't walk, right? I could barely walk, so much pain and inflammation. I had no idea that would all go away. Yeah, anyway, I don't want to get all emotional about this, but it was stealing my life. And it felt really important, and I started realizing, you're a psychologist. You know what that feeling of importance means. Sit and look at it. Help your brain see. Actually, it's not important, honey. So your kids can respond that way, right? Grandkids, etc. I want the candy, come on, I'm going to throw a big tantrum. My nephew, who I would take to the store, would say, Dia, will you get me this candy bar? And I would say, I will never get you a candy bar. I love you too much. And I had to be duck mode about it. I had to be super, super clear because I didn't want to escalate the tantrum. I just wanted to say, it really doesn't matter what you do. I'm not buying you that. I don't feel like it will help you. So we feel really resistant to giving these things up. And we really like the idea of moderation. We grew up with it. Believe me, the processed food industry wants us to believe that we can moderate these things. At the same time, I know people in the alcohol marketing industry, in some of these processed food industries, who say we sit around and design the food to be as addictive as possible. And then our counterparts are sitting around in rooms figuring out how to tell you it's healthy, how to market it as healthy to you so you will feel okay about it. So it's really a trap, right? Trying to moderate something that gives you an addiction response is a trap, right? The only way to let those brain pathways settle down and quit yelling at you and let the dopamine systems come back online so you can enjoy hearing the birds sing, all the natural things humans are supposed to enjoy. To start to enjoy those things again, we need to abstain from things that cause an addiction response so those brain pathways can settle down, right? When we try to moderate them, I'm just going to try to have a little. It actually makes us want the foods and drinks that cause this stress and this dopamine down regulation and weight gain and sleep issues, etc. It actually makes that worse. It actually makes us want those more. It's partly because it's changing our biochemistry, and it's partly because of the psychology, that the idea of giving up things that we've gotten used to, of changing our habits, feels very scary. So when I thought about, I've really got to break up with the way that I'm eating and drinking, I was crying a lot, right? First of all, I didn't know how until I found Annie Grace as far as the alcohol, and I kind of reconnected myself with what I knew from psychology as far as the food. And I found real clear answers about how to eat that actually is healthy, which is difficult in our environment. This makes me really mad. But I was experiencing this, I'm starting to figure out what I need to do differently, but it's going to be so hard and so sad. And I remember the early days, I was journaling a lot. I didn't have anyone to support me at the time. I did have Annie Grace's book, but I didn't have like a coach or anything. So I would get up in the morning, I would make my intention, and I would cry. I would tell myself, you have limitless potential within. I do not. I can't handle this, right? I just got really dedicated to it, though. So I had this big wake-up call moment. Some of you have heard me talk about this, but in between leaving a CEO position and starting my own coaching business, I worked in nursing homes for a while as a psychologist, and it was a big wake-up call because those people were not that different from me. A lot of them were not that much older than me. And a lot of the conditions, most of the conditions they were in there for, that they had become incapacitated over, related to eating and drinking more than anything. So I had this like, holy shit, excuse my language, I have to do something now, or in the next 5 to 10 years, I could be the one in the nursing home. I couldn't even go for a walk in the park anymore because of so much pain and inflammation in my system. So I had to change it, but I didn't exactly know how, and I was really scared. So if you feel really scared of giving up, I don't want to give up certain foods and drinks, that's just your primitive brain that believes these things are necessary for survival. It's wrong. Don't yell at her. It's okay. Nothing terrible's happening. We're just starting to embrace like healthy eating. We're just drinking healthy things. Nothing terrible's going to happen to us. Our primitive brain really thinks our habits have been keeping us alive, and if you change habits, we're going to die. And that's partly why the tears, like, this is too hard, I can't do this, right? So I had to really support that part of my psychology and tell her, you're going to be okay. We're just doing healthy eating. Nothing terrible is happening, right? So it's really important to recognize that and be kind to that little girl. It's a little girl that thinks candy's necessary, wine is necessary. It fights to maintain our habits for dear life. Reassure her, it's okay, I got this, right? Just watch. We're just going to have healthy food today, all day, and nothing terrible is going to happen. We might even love it. Okay, she'll settle down a little bit. Every time she starts to get scared, I really need the thing, I can't get through the night without the thing. No, it's okay. We're not having that thing today. That's okay. I'm going to eat real food. It's going to be amazing. We might love it, right? So most of us have had miserable experiences with dieting that made us feel like a failure, and that's something we want to run away from. I don't want to do that. I'm going to say I'm not going to do it, and then I do it. I felt like such a failure, like such a lack of integrity. What is wrong with me? Why can't I decide in the morning I'm not drinking and then follow through with that at night? You guys relate to that at all? I get emotional every time I talk about this stuff. I cannot believe how miserable I was and how I believed holding on to these habits was going to keep me happy, right? I'm not happy, but won't I be less happy if I let those things go? Actually, no. My brain chemistry will heal, my health will heal, my gut will heal. I didn't know all that stuff then. Anyway, I did decide I'm either going to die, end up in a nursing home, or I'm going to make these changes and see if it changes my life. It changed my life so big. I mean, in my 60s, I feel better than I felt through my 40s and my 50s. I'm able to hike in the mountains again, like so many aspects of health came back online. But as you start to approach a new healthy eating and weight loss journey, all those fears and anxieties get triggered. What if it sucks? What if What if I'm miserable? What if I'm hungry? Anybody who's been dieting, you know, I get hungry, I get anxious. These are biochemical changes. It's because dieting is not the right way to go. By the way, I'm doing a free event next week called Rethink Weight Loss, and it's all about shifting mindsets that keep us stuck, right? As long as I have this mindset, I just have to eat less. That's what everyone's always told me. That's what seemed to work in my 20s and 30s. I just have to eat less and starve and deprive myself for a while, and then eventually I'll lose weight. And then I'll go back to eating the old way. Terrible, terrible, terrible mindsets that we've all been sold for a long, long time. When you start to push those mindsets away and embrace really, truly healthy eating mindsets, it starts to become possible to fall in love with healthy eating, which we're very far from in our society, right? So I'm going to talk about all that next week. If you want to know more about that, it's at slenderforgood.com/May challenge. So it's a free challenge I'm doing. I'm putting a lot of time and energy into helping people change their psychology. So if those are issues for you, I'd love to see you join us. So we start to approach a new healthy eating and weight loss journey, and those fears and anxieties get triggered. Well, this feels awful. And we have experience, years of experience learning, I know how to settle down those uncomfortable feelings. I'll have a drink, right? Or I'll have some food. So it becomes this vicious cycle, and we feel like I can't escape this. I'm just in a trap. And we end up in this battle with ourselves. We feel pulled, we feel pushed. The wiser part of our brain, I always point to this part of the brain, the frontal cortex, knows I'm going to have a better life if I eat healthy every day. If I just eat healthy every day, I avoid cigarettes, I avoid alcohol, I avoid other addictive drugs. There's a part of my brain that knows all that, but the primitive part of my brain thinks we really need to keep the habits we've always had because they have kept us alive. Let's maintain the status quo. You can change this stuff tomorrow, right? Tomorrow, later. I'm going to be more well rested next week. When I'll do this after my birthday. I don't want to be dieting during my birthday, right? So sometimes the wiser part wins, especially when we're well rested, we're well fed, we're feeling our best. But lots of times the primitive part of our brain wins, and that's partly because it's loud, it's emotional, and it's fast. So we can feel like we're eating or drinking the thing we weren't going to eat or drink before we even made a choice. Oh, who put this in my hands? How did this happen? The primitive brain actually doesn't have control of your hands, but it can feel like it because it's so emotional and loud and fast. So I want to point out one more psychological driver here that helps keep us stuck in this troubled position. So interesting. I don't know if you've heard about this. It's called the left brain interpreter. So there's a part of our brain that we find that provides explanations for what we're doing. Why did I do this? And it will just make up an answer that seems plausible. And it doesn't tend to be particularly accurate lots of times. So when they study people who have had brain injuries, they find, wow, we just will make up an answer to something that, and it's not at all true. And you can see this happening when it comes to a behavior you're trying to change. Oh, I wasn't going to do this, but why am I doing it? Well, I had a really hard day. Here's I had a whole litany of them. Look, it was a really hard day. People were mad at me. I was mad at people. Mad was one of those things I could not stand. So I would start the story of, well, I wasn't going to have this, but I had a really hard day. No one could expect me to go through a hard day like that without having a drink and special food, right? So the left brain interpreter gives us explanations. It's just a little. It really doesn't matter. It doesn't hurt anything. Anyways, I can make up for it tomorrow. That's another set of those answers that I came up with. And we get pretty practiced at it, right? That part of our brain gets pretty practiced at giving us stories that fit the data, that tell us why it's okay. It doesn't hurt anything. It doesn't matter. We weren't going to do it. We did it. It doesn't mean anything, right? So some of mine were, it's okay. Here's one. It's okay because it's a special occasion. It's okay because it was a really hard day and I wanted it, I needed it. Here's one that was really good. We're going to work on this mindset next week. I deserve it. I deserve something special today. This is a treat and I deserve it. I just started hearing that phrase go through my head, and saying, okay, I'm going to let myself have the thing I want in 10 minutes. But first I'm going to notice what I'm saying to myself, and I'm going to sit with those thoughts. What does this mean? And I started catching the fact that I only said I deserved this about things that were bad for my health. And that started to hurt. Why do I only deserve things that are bad for me? Why am I saying that? What do I actually think I deserve in life? So remember, I'm eating and drinking these things I deserve because they're special, and I can't walk anymore. And I have prediabetes now. And I am pretty clear I'm on track to end up in a nursing home in my 60s, right? So why am I saying this? So how do we stop this whole cycle? Let's move on to that. So as I looked at how this all added up, and I looked at what I know about psychology, I realized I am trying to fight my own biology and my own psychology. I need to make it a priority to escape addiction. Whatever it takes, I need to get out of addiction. Right? This is an addiction response, and I want it to stop. I want to stop feeling like this is so important. I want to stop feeling like I can't resist this. I want to stop giving myself excuses for eating and drinking things that are harmful to my body, because I can make whatever excuses I want, but I'm not going to be healthy in the next 10 years. My health is going to start going down. I'm not going to have a gorgeous life in my 80s. I'm not going to be here in my 90s, right? My cultural training about you should moderate everything kind of hooked into memories, right? Memories are a big driver of what we want to eat and drink, what we believe about eating and drinking. And because my addiction pathways tell me I have to have a little, and because it's what's most on offer, most of the food out there is highly processed stuff. It's also fast, and the human brain has highly prioritized, the primitive brain highly prioritizes efficiency. It's one of the top 3 priorities of the primitive brain. Let's get whatever feels good, tastes good, etc., whatever gives pleasure. Let's get whatever reduces pain, and let's get whatever is efficient. These are the top priorities of the primitive brain. In our current environment, that's going to lead us to all the wrong stuff. All the harmful stuff that causes diabetes and heart disease and excess weight gain, etc. This makes me so upset. We are in a difficult time. People are making a profit off it, but we have to become warriors about being aware that we are in this dangerous time and really take our own brain and our own wisdom back. So research studies suggest that 73% of what's offered to us is these highly processed things. These are the things our primitive brain thinks are best. And what I find, like I'm like a smart, well-read woman who was looking at the articles and the books and the labels and making my best healthy eating decisions and feeling really virtuous that I was eating a lot less junk food. I was never going to McDonald's. I had this whole set of reasons why I was a healthy eater. But what I realize now is if like 37% of what Americans are eating is real food, and I'm eating 50% real food, I can feel pretty virtuous that I'm doing so much better than other people. I can feel like I'm a healthy eater when I'm far from a healthy eater, right? We're in this situation that is likely to lead us into addiction and ill health. I can tell myself my willpower is going to be better tomorrow, but basically every time I ingest food and drink that causes an addiction response, it keeps me wanting more. It keeps me in this addiction state. And this is something that gets worse with time for most of us, right? For one thing, the brain pathways, I desire the thing, I eat the thing, I get the dopamine response, I eat a little more of the thing to see if I can get a little better pleasure from it, right? Those brain pathways get faster and faster. So we tend to want to go that way. I always think of the analogy of if I'm living in a tribe in the jungle and we have a pathway to the river that, to get our water that is really well worn, right? So we don't run into snakes because we would see them on the path, and we feel pretty safe going down that path. And then a man-eating tiger starts taking out the people going down that path. We might decide we better avoid that path and find a different one. It's going to be hard at first, right? It'll end up getting easy, but it's going to feel hard at first. And so we might feel like, maybe I'll go this way again. And then we see the tiger. Oh, maybe I won't go that way. Maybe I'll go this way. So I think it's a little bit like that. We have to have a little bit of a wise warrior spirit about changing our eating away from the way other people are eating, the way we grew up eating, the way we feel pretty excited about eating, and find a way to get excited about healthy eating, right? Because these addiction responses tend to get worse over time. Those brain pathways tend to get faster and faster. Those foods and drinks take on more and more importance, and they steal more and more of our health. So I really wanted to fight addiction. I wanted to get honest with myself, right? I wanted to treat my body with care and love that isn't driven by the processed food industry or the alcohol industry, right? So, excuse me. Where I live in Oaxaca, Mexico, we are in a very hot season. So even by this time of day, 11:42 my time, it's hot. All right, so I made a firm decision to break addictions. I knew it was going to feel painful at first, right? So I threw everything at it. I started journaling. I started praying every morning. I started setting my attention. I studied self-hypnosis so that I could change my mind about what's good to eat. I just decided I'm going to win or I'm going to die trying when it comes to this. So I committed to a year of abstinence from processed foods and from alcohol. And the early days, crying, scared, but committed, because I'm going to end up in a nursing home in the next 5 years. I mean, if you worked in nursing homes 3 days a week for a couple of years and you saw, wow, they lose everything. They lose their home. They lose their car. So many of my patients said to me, my kid, you got to get me out of here. My kids are taking my house. My kids are taking my car. They don't have anything anymore. They worked their whole lives to be able to enjoy their retirement, but their health was pretty well gone, and most of it came down to eating and drinking. So I know it's not easy to even imagine you could be someone who would end up in the nursing homes in your 60s, but it became I think this is real. I think this is a real possibility. So I'm going to be honest. I'm going to throw everything at it. It shouldn't feel so hard to really embrace healthy eating. But the thing is, we kind of fool ourselves, right? I think I don't know if I have something in here about this, but there's a lot of research showing that we fool ourselves about how much of the processed foods we eat. We fool ourselves about how much fast food we eat, right? I knew I was avoiding a lot of those things, but I also could see, well, these things that I don't want to stop, they're not beneficial for me. They're not nutritious. I just enjoy them. I just want them. And I always think about popcorn at the movies. I would get this giant thing of popcorn. And it felt like a reason. I always thought popcorn was like a diet food, and it was kind of reasonable. But I also watched my behavior with it, and I could see this doesn't look healthy. And I don't think I'm skipping dinner to have popcorn, right? That was something I learned in childhood. On Sundays, we skip dinner and have popcorn. But I could see this is a giant thing of not really nutritious food, and I can't stop once I start. In fact, by the time I get to the bottom, I'm ready to go get a refill. All right, so I was scared. I was going to fight and claw my way out of addiction. I was going to be a warrior about it. I was going to give myself hugs. I was going to journal. I was going to pray every day. I tried things I had been scared to try. Every time I would feel awkward, I don't know how to go to this event and not drink with everybody, I would really intentionally embrace the awkwardness, tell myself, feeling awkward means you're actually changing something. It's a good thing. Because every time I had an uncomfortable feeling, I wanted to eat or drink the non-nutritious stuff. So, nope, awkward is good, right? I reached out to people I loved. I practiced self-hypnosis. I just threw everything at it. I know you people that I'm talking to in this group, you have lots of your own actions that you have taken to get free of addiction. One of the reasons I like to come in here periodically and talk to you is because I want you to know the same principles and practices that get us out of addiction with alcohol can get us out of addiction with other food and drink. So I did a deep study of what guidelines lead to healthy, sustainable weight loss. I eventually realized I'm pretty confused about what's healthy to eat. In fact, as someone who trained in evidence-based practices and consulted in evidence-based practices, I realized I don't actually know what guiding principles lead to health. I just have bought into, oh, this seems healthy, doesn't have too much of this, doesn't have too much of that. It has a lot of great information on the side that says how healthy it is, that it has antioxidants and it's low fat and it's low calorie, blah, blah, right? And even now when I look at those, if I sit and look at those packages, they look appealing to me. They draw me. Well, they're designed that way, right? So I realized I don't actually know. I'm not really super clear what elements make a diet healthy. So, and I didn't know how to find the answers in this environment. I could tell the books we're reading, the articles we're reading are misleading us. So I took my training and I went into the research myself and I searched for elements of eating, guidelines for eating, and it shouldn't be 100, it shouldn't be 300, right? It should be 4 or 5. And so as I went to the research looking at what provides sustainable weight loss, super rare to find, almost none of the diets out there produce sustainable weight loss, and also weight loss that goes with getting healthier, I found 4 key principles. I started eating that way. I greatly increased the food and drink that contributes to health and healing, right? It made sense to think of it this different way, instead of how much of this junky stuff can I have before I get in trouble with it, before it causes problems, before I can't stop. I really started shifting my mindset to this: every single thing I eat or drink either helps or harms my body. I can fool myself all I want, but things either help or harm my body. I got committed to eating and drinking only things that help my body, because I thought I'm going to end up in a nursing home if I don't. I already can't walk, right? I'm already talking to surgeons about what are we going to do about my feet. I started changing my mind. I started changing my intentions. I worried I'm going to feel deprived. But frankly, it pretty quickly, when I started eating this abundance of highly nutritious foods, it started getting easy. Like my body started to change. My brain started to change. I started feeling like, I just had one of my Slender for Good clients a couple of days ago saying, I think she's like 3 or 4 months into the program eating this way. She said, I actually am enjoying the highly nutritious foods so much more than I thought. Our taste buds turn over within 2 weeks. So when we get, for one thing, alcohol off our taste buds can heal. When we quit putting sugar, that overwhelms our taste buds, we quit eating those processed things, we start to enjoy the taste of real nutritious foods. So it starts getting easier to keep eating like an abundance of those things. And it gets so rewarding. So our bodies let us know quite quickly. My body let me know quite quickly it was feeling happy. I had no idea. I'd lived with pain and inflammation since an injury in high school. I had no idea that could all go away. I was hoping I would sleep better, but I really didn't know I could go from about a 2 out of 10 to a 9 or 10 out of 10. I really didn't know. I didn't think I was eating that badly, right? But when I changed my eating to, I eat highly nutritious foods in abundance, and that's all I eat. Boy, did things change in a dramatic way. My mood started lifting. I hear that from people that embrace this eating approach really quickly too, is I just feel calmer. Things feel lighter to me. I feel less irritable. I'm more likely to be laughing, right? That is largely about what's happening in our gut and what's happening in our brain. So letting our brain heal from the addiction of non-nutritious, highly processed non-nutritious food-like substances actually turns out to feel so rewarding so fast. So instead of feeling like I'm missing out, I was scared of missing out. What I was feeling like is like the world is coming back online. I'm enjoying small pleasures again. I'm going for walks again. So instead of feeling restricted and deprived, I felt liberated in life. I know about a lot of you guys have experienced this with alcohol. You can experience this with food too. So here's my bottom line for you. I know this is a little bit long. I can't help it. I could go on and on and on. But here's my bottom line. The way to quit struggling with addiction responses to food and alcohol is to commit to stopping addiction. You don't need to say I'm an alcoholic or not an alcoholic. Who cares? It's addictive, right? You can quit drinking to get yourself out of an addiction response because you hate the addiction response. In a way you're in love with it, but in a way you hate it and it's causing stress and it's taking too much time and energy, right? You don't have to keep believing the lie that alcohol or sugar or other processed foods are required for life. It's just not true. That is serving the processed food industry. These are not requirements for our life. They're not benefiting us. They're stealing our health. So catch yourself arguing about holding on to cravingful stuff. That's your primitive brain freaking out. You can reassure her. Don't be mean to her. Honey, we're not having that today. We're eating real food all day. It's going to be awesome. And we're getting a lot of it. So quit arguing to hold on to the cravingful stuff. Make the empowered decision to abstain for an extended period of time so you can starve that addiction response, those addiction pathways, that dopamine excess and the dopamine down regulation. Like, let all that stuff heal. Give yourself enough time. Like, if I realized, if I tell myself, well, I'll just have some of this once a week on Fridays. For one thing, I did that for a long time and it didn't work. It was a lie. For another thing, it is a great way to keep those pathways active. So if I want to break up with addiction, I just really want to starve those pathways for a while and build some new ones. I wanted to take back my wise brain. So when you hear the arguments, I should be able to have some of this, just lightly ask yourself, is that true though? Like, everybody eats this and it doesn't hurt them, but is that really true? I don't know if that's true. I think that's something we've been sold our whole lives, and I don't think it's true. So commit to end addiction and intentionally build something gorgeous in the open space that creates in your life. Like, for me, I got hours and hours of life back, like every day. Like, I wake up feeling great every morning. That wasn't happening, right? I look forward to feeling well all day, to being able to go for a walk if I want, etc. The primitive part of your brain is going to say, no, this is going to be terrible. We could die. It kind of feels like that. It doesn't say that like you don't let yourself hear yourself say that, but that, oh, this would be terrible. It's kind of saying we might die. It's because it associates this addiction with survival. It's wrong. It's mistaken. No, we're not going to die, right? We're going to be okay. We're just eating healthy. Nothing terrible is going to happen. Now, the people around you, the culture around you is going to say, you don't have to quit. There's no need. Just moderate it. But just hug that part of you that believes that. Write down all the reasons and rationales for continuing that addiction cycle. It's just little. It won't hurt anything. Everybody's doing it. I've always done it. It shouldn't matter. Just write those down and go, okay, I'll look at these in a year after my year of abstinence and see what I think. I'm going to give my wise brain, my wise gut, right, my hormone systems all a chance to really come back online. Ask yourself at those moments, what if we love it? What if we love it? What if there are amazing, healthy parts of you just waiting to get free from the stress of addiction? I think about one of the gorgeous women I worked with last year who started telling me, okay, now that I'm getting out of this way of eating and drinking, there's parts of me that I had lost, like these kind of magical, amazing parts of me that went away, I don't know, decades ago, that are coming back, and it feels so gorgeous. Have you guys had any of those experiences? What questions, what thoughts, what do you think? It was really realizing I don't want this addiction cycle at all that made it possible for me to go through those early days of tears and break up with the stuff that was causing that. One of the difficult things that I have to acknowledge is it's going to be very hard for most people to find what's actually truly healthy eating. The answers out there tend to be pretty terrible. That's the first thing I teach people in my program is a slender weight eating approach that actually works. But the high level answer is find the things that are unequivocally healthy to eat, that are not broken down into flour or juiced, etc., that they're still whole foods, and eat them in abundance. It's one of the keys to breaking up with the other stuff. All right, I'm glad you guys came. I'm so glad some people found it at the right time. I love coming into this group, and it had been a while. I hope this was helpful. All right, take care.